Hi guys, and welcome to Escape We Watch Reviews. My name is Steve, and today we're going to be reviewing the brand new Pagani design PD1762. So I received this watch for free from the Pagani design flagship store on AliExpress. I don't have to send the watch back, but you guys know the deal by now. That's not going to sway my review one way or the other. And as always, if by the end of this review you find yourself wanting to pick one of these up, I'll be leaving an affiliate link down in the video description. If you use that link, you aren't paying any extra, but this channel will benefit a little bit from the commission earned, which helps keep the channel going. So anyone and everyone who has ever used my affiliate links, I am still here because of you guys. So thank you guys so much for using those. It really helps the channel out. The current retail price for this watch is $190 US. And that's, I think, one of their most expensive watches. That is before any taxes or sales or coupons. And you guys know Pagani Design, they are always giving a sale. So I wouldn't pay $190 for this watch. You should be able to get this for quite a bit cheaper. Currently, we're in the middle of an anniversary sale, and this thing can be had for about $135 after all the coupons and discount codes. So just keep that in mind when you're about to purchase one of these. As for the color options, you have this one. That's it. I think Pagani has been experimenting a little bit with some dial colors and stuff like that, so maybe in the future we'll see a black dial or blue dial or something like that, so just keep your eye out. But for now, you are stuck with white. The watch case, bracelet, and clasp are made of stainless steel, has a sapphire crystal, a screw-down crown, a screw-down case back, 100 meters of claimed water resistance, and the watch is powered by the Seiko NH34 automatic GMT movement. So for anyone that has followed along the channel for a long time, you guys know that the watch that this is an homage to is pretty much my grail watch, the older vintage 40mm cases. I've tried every one on AliExpress, and they all come up a little bit short. So what I did was I ended up making my own. And I'm very happy with the way this watch turned out. But if you guys aren't tinkerers and you don't want to mess with doing that, this, I think, is your best bet to get a 40mm homage to this watch. This is definitely the one to get in my opinion. So I say we get into the full review, but before we do a quick wrist check today. Wearing the J&G Academic. This will be coming up on the channel next. This is an absolutely beautiful watch, nice and thin. Love this thing. Looks gorgeous. All right, let's get to the dimensions. And like I said, this is a 40mm watch. 39.9 on diameter, 12.2 millimeters thick, 20 millimeter lug width, lug to lug 47.5 millimeters, and sized up for my 7.5 inch wrist with 4 links removed. It weighs 141 grams. So again, I think the size is great. They nailed it. They kept it under 40 millimeters, under 48 millimeter lug to lug, 20 millimeter lug width. Can't complain about that. Bracelet tapers down to 16. Thickness, I think, is fine as well. You got a nice flat case back, so it does sit pretty nicely on the wrist. It is a very flat case, like there's hardly any curvature as you can see there, but I do think it wears pretty good, so I'm going to go outside right now and throw it on my wrist for you. And here we are on my 7.5 inch wrist, and as you can see, I think it wears pretty darn good. Very comfortable as well, so it sits nice and low to the wrist, so it's not a deep case back or anything like that. The bracelet seems comfortable enough, feels balanced. Small crown, so it's not digging into the wrist or anything like that. And overall, I think it looks pretty good. Got nice magnification on the Cyclops. No AR coating on the crystal, but you can see it's still very legible with the black and the white. I think legibility is not an issue with this, even without AR coating on that crystal. But yeah, I think it overall looks pretty darn good. Stepping out into a little bit of sunlight, still hasn't quite come up yet, but I think it looks pretty good. Still very legible. You can see it does get washed out a little bit when you get direct sunlight like that, but 99% of the time it's really not an issue, and I think it all looks pretty darn good. But I think this is going to look great on some straps, so I say we go throw it on some. Here we are. Got some more sunlight here for you, but that is on a Straps Co. rubber strap, and I mean, I had no doubts that this would look good, and I think it does look pretty good. What do you guys think of that? And here we are on my favorite suede strap. I think it looks great on white dials. So yeah, this thing looks really good. And I did want to point out that Pagani did do a pretty good job of brushing the lug space, between the lugs there. So even on straps, you don't really see any rough finishing or anything. So kudos to them. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Here we are on a orange rubber strap. I think that looks really good. Kind of makes that orange GMT hand and the orange text on the dial pop just a little bit. I think that looks fantastic. And here we are on a crown and buckle single pass. That's how it sits on the wrist with one layer underneath it. I think it looks pretty good. That orange stripe just kind of plays with the dial there. And yeah, very comfortable setup. I think it looks pretty good. And lastly, here we are on a ribbed nylon strap. This is from CNS Watch Bands. Hopefully their site is back up soon because these straps are pretty good. And yeah, I think for whatever reason, I've always liked this style of watch on a gray nylon strap. And yeah, this one, no exception. I think it looks excellent. There's 2 layers underneath the watch there, so it still sits up pretty good. Nice and comfortable. I've got no problems with it. I think that looks good. I say we go back inside and let's get back to this review. Alright, so let's talk about the case finishing on this thing. And case finishing is actually pretty good. You can see here, you got nice vertical brushing on the tops of the lugs there. Really nice and linear. I've got no issues with those. Those look great. Flipping it over to the case sides here. Nice polished on the sides there. You can see right about there, that transition from the light to the dark there. It's not super smooth, but it's really not something you notice on a daily basis. When it's on your wrist, it looks fine. And I've got no major complaints with it. These transitions, you can see here, getting up nice and close. They're really nicely done. They're nice and smooth. They're not sharp or anything like that. Same with the bottom edge of this thing. It might be a little bit sharp, but it hasn't been an issue for me personally. You have polished crown guards here. Nice and small crown guards, so it doesn't have the big fat wide crown guards, so they got that right as well. Very nice signed crown here, and again, I think it works pretty good. It's tucked in there nicely, nice and clean. It's a small crown, but it gets the job done, and it doesn't really get in the way at all. Now, I am overall pretty happy with the case finishing on this thing. The bezel, as you can see, it's kind of got a radial brushing with your black lacquer paint filled engraved numerals all around. And again, I think they did a pretty darn good job. I see no major issues with that. Even that little polished chamfer around the edge of the bezel looks really good. And again, the transitions are nice and crisp. So yeah, the case finishing on this is definitely up there with one of the better Paganis I've had on the channel. And I'm overall pretty happy with it. Flipping it over to the case back here, you have a display case back. That is just a mineral crystal. But it does look pretty good. It's your typical case back, nice and low profile. It has your notches to get a case back removal tool in there. I've got no problems with it. Screw down case back, circular brushing on the bottom of the lugs as well. No complaint. All right, so let's talk about the crystal. We'll test it for sapphire real quick. Positive for sapphire. Testing the Cyclops, and the Cyclops is also sapphire. So no surprise there. Sapphire crystal, sapphire Cyclops. That's nice to see. Cyclops gives good magnification there, probably 2.5x. I think it looks pretty good. The one thing I don't like about it is you can see that date frame kind of chamfer thing around the window. I think they would have been better off just using a simple date cutout, but yeah, that's just me. The Cyclops has pretty good alignment. It might sit a little bit high, but it's not bad. The crystal itself, it's a dead flat piece of sapphire crystal. It sits up above the bezel just a little bit with a chamfer around the outside. No anti-reflective coating, but like I mentioned, I don't really think it's missing it. You know, these white dials with the black hands, black indices, they're super legible, and I really usually don't have any issues reading this thing. So I don't think it needs anti-reflective coating. It would obviously be nice to have it, but I don't think it needs it. Sometimes that date window gets a little obscured, but overall, it's really not that bad. All right, so let's talk about the dial in the hand. So the dial on this thing, it is a gloss white dial. As you can see right there, you can see the reflection of that second hand counterbalance there. And yeah, I think it's a pretty nice dial. I like the fact that they used gloss. The dial is accented by black accents and orange accents, and I think it all looks pretty good. It's super legible, like I said. Pretty happy with that. Here you can see the applied indices at all the hour markers. They have a dark surround. The one thing I don't like is you can see right here pretty clearly the mismatch in lume color. So this does use BGW9, which I'm surprised with and happy with. It is BGW9 on the hands and on the dial. And yeah, I think they just can't get that color match right. I think it's because the entire index is all black, and so they're filling over top of that, and that's why it kind of has that almost gray appearance to it. So yeah, I think they need to work on that just a little bit, and I think it would look a lot better, and they would probably get better results from it too, which you'll see here in just a little bit. But as far as the execution goes, I think it's done pretty good. Everything seems to be aligned pretty much spot on. I got no issues with the alignment on it. The proportions seem maybe just a touch off on the hands. I think the main hands can be a little bit longer. The GMT hand is fine. Really nice pop of orange there. Down here you've got your GMT automatic water resistance 100 meters, that GMT in orange. I think it looks pretty good. You do have an applied Pagani shield here. It's kind of a dark gray color, but you can see here that it does catch the light a little bit differently, and I think it overall looks pretty darn good. I mentioned that date cutout there, or the date cutout could be done a little bit better. I just don't think it looks great through that Cyclops. That's just my personal opinion. But overall, I think it does a pretty good job of pulling off the look. You can kind of see here down. I'm going to focus on this 6 o'clock index here. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm seeing. But the lume fill is just not even. It's just, I don't know. Most of the time it looks fine, but it just doesn't. It's not flat. So it's kind of weird. And then you've got kind of like a dome to the lume on all the circular hour markers. So it just kind of looks funny. That's really just nitpicking, but something I thought I would mention. The lume on this thing, I'm going to pop up the lume shot right now, and here you can see it against a couple other watches in the collection, and it is BGW9 lume. You can see the hands themselves are pretty good. Even the circular indexes on the dial are pretty good, but the baton and triangle index on this thing, they're just not coated in the same amount of layers, and you can tell it fades pretty quickly. The dial itself fades really quickly. It's BGW9 lume, but the application on the dial itself is not great. So it really doesn't last all that long, unfortunately. But I think they're stepping into the right direction. Hopefully they can keep it up and improve it even more. All right, so let's talk about the movement in this thing. So the movement is the Seiko NH34 GMT automatic movement. This one is running excellent. So here's the time grapher here. You can see it's running pretty much bang on. I've had no issues with the accuracy of this thing. It's great. Very happy with that. The movement itself, it is 21,600 beats per hour, so 6 ticks of the second hand every second. It hand winds about 40 hours of power reserve. I'm going to show you the functions of the crown here. So like I mentioned earlier, nice screw down crown here, signed. Pretty good grip on it. It's a small crown, but it works perfectly fine. Popping out to the first position here is your hand winding. It's nice and smooth. I've got no problems with that. Popping it out to the second position. This is where you change your date or your GMT hand. So when you roll it backwards, that changes the date. All those dates are nicely centered in there too. I'm going to show you that. Yeah, I've got no problems with the alignment of the date on this thing. Rolling it forward, that clicks forward your GMT hand. So it's really a satisfying click. It pops right into place, 24 clicks. So overall, I am very happy with that, and I think it looks good. I think it works great. I've got no problems with that. Popping it out to the third position here, hacks your movement. This is where you set your time, and again, everything works as it should. Pressing in the crown here, we'll see if this actually works for me. That time it worked. I had one problem earlier where I pressed it in and it didn't want to do anything, so I had to press it a couple times and it finally went in. So just something to be aware of. Most of the time it pops right in, and I've had no real issues with it. This movement is great. It runs really good. It's going to be accurate. It's going to be reliable. Cheap to replace. Easy to find parts for if you need to. Yeah, I'm really happy with the movement in this thing. All right, so let's talk about the bracelet on this thing. And the bracelet is all new from Pagani Design. Very happy with it. It is 20 millimeters. It tapers down to 16 millimeters at the clasp. And overall, I am pretty happy with it. The brushing on it matches the case perfectly. You can see the end links, they flow with the case curvature pretty much spot on. You can see they hang out just a touch. But overall, I am pretty happy with it. These end links they do have just a touch of slop in them. It really hasn't been an issue at all, but I just wanted to mention it is there. You can see it maybe a little bit. Female end links, solid end links, solid links, screw pins for adjusting. I have 2 links left to remove though, so just keep that in mind. This is going to be a little bit of a tight fit if you have smaller wrists. So yeah, just something to note. And I think overall the bracelet itself, it's actually pretty nice, pretty comfortable, and I've got no real issues with it. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the bracelet on this thing. Getting to the clasp. This is, again, a new clasp from Pagani Design. It looks like the same clasp, so you have your Pagani Design branding on the top here, brushed on the top. Got a flip lock here. and it's just your typical operation here. But the insides, that's all new. Again, this is a new setup here. I'm sorry, it's not focusing. But you got nice tight tolerances in here. Nice tight tolerances here. This one was always real sloppy on the previous clasp. So it's nice that they tighten this up a little bit. Everything works really good. Moving down to the micro adjust, you don't have a quick link or anything like that, but you also have visible micro adjust here. I'm really happy with that. They could probably throw a couple more in here, but as it is, you get 3 micro adjusts, and I think that's plenty for this watch. And yeah, I think it all looks good. It all works good. You can see here when I close it up, this clasp is pretty low profile as well. So I'm happy with this clasp. It doesn't have sharp edges. You know, these edges here were always sharp before. These ones up here, they're still a little bit sharp, but they've been honed back just a little bit in my opinion. So overall, I am pretty happy with this clasp. Yeah, very, very nice that Pagani decided to put a new clasp on these things. It's always been a sticking point for me, and I know a lot of other reviewers. So I'm happy to see that they're kind of taking our feedback and running with it, and they gave us a pretty good clasp. So yeah, pretty happy with that. As for the bracelet in general, I'm pretty happy with it. There's really yeah, not too much to complain about. This is one of the better Pagani bracelets in my opinion. So there you go, guys. That is the new Pagani design PD1762. Yeah, it's one of their better watches in my opinion. Right up there. They did everything good on this thing. They're moving in the right direction. You know, BGW9 on the hands, on the dial. If they could just fix that up a little bit more, I think this watch would be killer. If they could match the lume of, say, Steel Dive or San Martin for the prices that they're asking. And I think at the $190 price, they need to match those. That's pretty high of a price for this watch. You know, thankfully, like I said, these things almost always go on sale, so I wouldn't pay $190 for this watch. I don't think it's worth that much, but I do think it's worth probably, I think the $135 is a good price for this watch. You know, putting it up side by side with, you know, something from Steel Dive in the $120 range. The Steel Dive is going to be a little bit better in some areas, a little bit worse in other areas. So I think it all kind of evens out. But yeah, I think this watch is really good. And if you're looking for that 40 millimeter polar dial watch, this is the one to get. And I think you're going to be pretty happy with it. There's not too much to complain about on this thing. And I like the fact that they're, you know, new bracelet, new clasp, BGW9 lume, NH34. There's a lot to like about this watch. I think that's about it for me, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.